Michael Coleman is hosting his show tonight on the network. Word is, and away we go.
Well, the word is music played such a strong part and ingredient in the social causes of yesterday and, of course, today. I have with us tonight a man who knows the generations of music. Although I ain't never seen him dance, kind of like the Don Cornelius. At least Don danced at least once coming down the Soul Train line. I ain't never seen John Hanson dance, but Black
I have
America.
danced in my day.
This is John Hanson, the host of Black America. It's a nationally syndicated show, which is more than just about the music. The music is rich, the music is great, but there are also some folks who have made some things happen for the world that John has had on his show from time to time. And if you've never heard it, we'll let you know how you can. But he's been doing it for a while. And John, welcome to the show. Word
Well, thanks
is.
for having me, Michael.
Well, give the folks a background about yourself before we talk about the subject matter.
Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Started in radio in 1966. Our high school, Pershing High School, the fabulous Pershing High School, had a talent show every year. And the year that I emceed the talent show, there were so many acts that the MC could not come out after each act. So subsequently, I made a poem out of I made a poem out of the three acts that were going to be performing. And after the talent show, program director at the local radio station in Detroit asked, had I ever considered becoming a disc jockey? And I said, yeah, now. And I guess to say the rest is history. Radio is all I've done for the last 50 some years. 2 years out of college, I worked for the Human Opportunities Corporation. And other than that, I've been in broadcast.
Well, I tell you what, and radio is still, I think, such a strong medium. I mean, I know we have the updated stuff with the technology over the, the internet, live streaming, all that. But radio, that's where it all began. And
it's still a part of our, a lexicon. More people, particularly African Americans, still listen to radio than any other media.
And I always think the best way to have an interest or to watch a baseball game is to listen to it on the radio. I think radio announcers in baseball. Yeah, right. Yeah. You'd almost rather listen to the game on the radio. And a lot of folks, they'll turn their sound down on television and catch the radio version of it. And of course, you being a Detroit guy, I mean, with the Tigers and the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's some strong baseball right there. A lot of strong baseball. Now, talk about your connection. Now, and John and I have known each other for decades, like 2 decades at least. Your connection to the University of Texas.
I came to Austin, Texas on an athletic scholarship to Houston-Tillerson University now back in 1968. In 1974, I began working at KUT Radio. Prior to that, 4 years prior, I had applied for employment, was denied. So in 1974, they finally gave me, quote unquote, the green light. And I've been there ever since 1974. 74, I started doing a nightly music program titled Soul on FM. I was the only African-American on radio in Austin at that time. The only other person was in Taylor, his name, the late Tony Vaughn. So there weren't any other African-Americans in the media, particularly on radio at that particular time. In 1980, I began doing In Black America because the previous host, which was a rotating host of College Professor, had left and they wanted to have some kind of continuity. Also, KAZI, which was now the Black radio station, came online, and management thought since there was a Black radio station, my program wasn't particularly necessary. And they also said I would have a greater impact nationally than I had locally. So that's how it all began, with me producing In Black America back in 1980.
And then throw out there, I had a little stint there at KAZI. I mean, a lot of young programmers at that time, a lot of strong people, and they were very, very much community involved. That's why I really
like. And they still are.
That's good to hear.
Boys of Austin, right?
That's outstanding. That's really good to hear because that's the roots of the community. It's not just the music thing. I mean, it's like back in the day when churches were the root of the neighborhood, where the meetings would take place, and they still do today. And sometimes it don't just have to do with church or religion. Well, John and I are going to talk about, he more than I, because he knows the era, given the social injustices going on, given the fact that athletes are, I say being allowed to stand up, they've always had a chance to stand up because the guys in the 60s and 70s did. Though this is the division of sports, you know, there's all kinds of connections and way to connect sports with pop culture, obviously, more so today than ever before.
This is brought to you by the Cherry Company.
It hasn't been that relevant as it is today. So John is going to, we're going to have some fun here. John's going to talk about the genre of the music, who the entertainers were when things were going on. And, you know, with him being, you know, a kid in the 60s, I'm pretty sure that memory, just like it was yesterday, it don't all go away, does it, John, when you get older?
It doesn't all go away, no.
Well, okay, now,
not all of it.
For
like
me,
yesterday, John, I'm 69, and I constantly hear the Temps, Four Tops, Martha and the Vandellas,
right,
Gladys, all of that. I can remember Gladys. I'm getting ready to line up on cross country at Van Cortlandt Park, and they hyping up
exactly.
I heard it through the grapevine.
Yes, sir.
Marvin
yes, sir.
And Tammy.
Marvin and Tammy, you know, they got Junior Walker, Contours, Jackie Wilson, of course, Aretha Franklin.
That's what we're talking about. These are the voices, and those of you who are of age should know this, and those of you who aren't need to know this. Those artists you heard them just throwing out there, just like they weren't going, what was his name? They were like that person, that person, that person, that person. A lot of these folks had a voice in the civil rights movement, or their music was the soundtrack to what was going on. And you go a few years,
exactly, it was the soundtrack to the civil rights movement in that era.
Big time, and you know, a song that it's a song that when you listen to the words and you compare to what's going on today, especially the last 3 years, Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Going to Come." I mean, if there's a song that's so close, other than the Temptations' "Ball of Confusion," to what we got going on here in America.
Got that, and then you got Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On."
What's going on? And these are songs
like you said, Temptation, "Ball of Confusion."
No, they sang to the social ills, if you will, of the day. People moving out because of the color of their skin. We're still dealing with that today. But today it's more rich because the athletes of this era, of this generation, they've realized, well, we do have something to offer. Now, there were those back in the day who were arrogant enough to think they had something to offer, whether someone told them they did or not. Ali comes to mind, you know, because there's a lot of cats, you know,
Ali
I don't
comes
compare.
to mind, but also, you know, you still had Bill Russell.
Yep.
And you had John Wooden that played for the Cleveland.
You played for Cleveland Browns, yeah.
Well,
and Kurt Flood,
which was Lou Alcindor back then.
And so you had my teammate John Carlos.
Olympics.
John Carlos, but you can't forget Kurt Flood, because I mean, a lot of baseball, what it is today, was because of Kurt Flood took the hit.
And he didn't get
to enjoy agency.
Boy, he took the hit, didn't he?
And did not get to enjoy none of it. Yeah,
no, I see, and I think during those movements, plural movements, and they were, I mean, these are, like you said, these are big dogs. These were big dogs of their day, and when you say their name today, we know who you're talking about, whether it be for what they did on the court or on the field or off the court as well. But a lot of those entertainers, they were the soundtrack, moving on up, and the impressions. I mean, when you think about that era,
impressions, Jerry Butler back there,
Jerry Butler,
he was singing
the Iceman.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so today's era, I mean, I can't really find a soundtrack today for Black Lives Matter. I can't really find a soundtrack for the young brothers and sisters who've been gunned down, unarmed, gunned down by police. A lot of that music we're talking about, you can just insert and it rides its coattails.
And you're absolutely right about that, Mike, because you know, I'm thinking, and I always think about this. I mean, I don't know what event occurs, but I'm thinking, what will the history of the music of today reflects the time of the day? And there is really no message, and I would say this loosely, message music that's going to capture what's going on today,
Right.
other than, you know, the hippity and there's no connectiveness. If I can say, going to actually define this period in history, music wise.
Hey, John, when you said the hippity,
Yes, sir.
what popped in my
Yes,
mind.
sir.
The hippity, the hoppity.
I mean, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Hip hop, exactly.
But it was,
not denigrating hip hop, but there is no signature song that's
right.
going to reflect
and
George
you think
Floyd,
about it.
Jamil Rice,
when they first
and all the others.
When they first came out, they talked about the issues. They did talk about the issues at that when they first came out.
They did
in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then they drifted away from that. And just like you were saying, the George Floyd incident, the cat in Georgia who got shot jogging. I mean, what soundtrack today that goes with that is relative to it? And it's not.
Oh, you know, Ahmaud Arbery. You know, what soundtrack is gonna trigger that particular moment and that memory of those incidents?
Yes.
Musically, and it's from my vantage point, it's going to be hard to ascertain.
I'd like to insert this, Mike. You
can't put a musical track with those incidents right now that I can see. I may be wrong, but I don't think I am. I mean, when you look at, if you go back and look at Michael Brown, and that's 2-3 years ago, there wasn't a song, at least from my vantage point, that you could equate to that period and that incident in Ferguson.
Mike, what you said that was really caught my mind, and I got lost for a minute. Hip hop basically was the anthem until
exactly
economics, because you had them. It started in the Bronx. I'm from New York, and all of those early rap, KRS, and all of them guys, they were talking about social conditions and all of those songs.
Yes, they were.
But then, as I talked to Mike about us having a Black-owned digital media company, just like yourself, then the regular media took hip hop and turned it into not a social, because that was more of a social and music moment.
And it grew out of the street, the message that they wanted to convey, what was happening in their lives at that point.
But the establishment took that and turned it into economics and turned that street talent, because we're talking about lower level, where this movement comes from the underbelly of our community, where most of these type things come from, and they took that and used the poverty to lure the artists to now change the lyrics to the commercial thing. I'll leave that to you and Mike to talk about.
Well, no, it's a good point. They kind of hijacked it, is what they did. And they took it.
No, they did hijack it for commercial purposes, in which, you know, I don't blame them for moving. If this is what they were willing to market commercially as an enterprise and sell, then you're going to go where the dollars are.
But I think, hold it, let me cut you off there. I think it's much more than commercialization of the music. It has social implications, sociological implications, why the quote unquote people that's running the industry, the movie industry, the news industry, this puts you in a frame of mind when they turn you to breasts and buttocks, and it doesn't serve no useful social message.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.
Of today's kids, well, the saggy pants.
Well, in essence, it co-opted their particular intent.
Right, exactly.
Which was the intent to express what was going on the ground and in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And like you just said, you know, then it got to body parts.
Right.
And when it got to body parts, which was selling, it went to it you know, it did a whole, you know, a 160.
It's just like our social culture when athletes, black athletes came out with the Black Power, when they came out with all them different handshakes that I don't even know how they remember. You seen them doing the intro, the high five, all of that came out of our community and out of the things that we're involved in, and they've been hijacked.
Well, and so now when you see the ripoff, if you will, because there's not a payoff for
Mike,
those.
Don't be so hard on them. Hard on them. Now you know that you middle of the road, Mike. Please.
I'm on your channel. I can do that.
Oh, I love it.
But when you see the assimilation, if you will, you know, and then you're denied. You like whether it be the restaurant situation because of someone's wearing a pair of Jordans, ma'am, you can't wear those. Well, how come that person in there can? That type of thing right there. What was hijacked has now become the ammunition, in one sense of stereotyping, in another sense of accepting. But those who come from that culture, they don't have a say in it. That's where it's coming from. But you don't get the say in it because of the other meaning attached to the beads or the braids. I remember as a kid, I can't think of her name, Bo Derek. You know, she had the braids.
She had that the cornrows. Then it was a whole different.
So a lot of sister girls being told that the airline industry or whatever, you can't wear your hair that way. But yet they're seeing it be idolized on Wall Street. But they're penalized or punished for it, and that's just one aspect. But it's kind of what you see in terms of the culture kidnapping or ripping off of. It's like the ones who. Well,
it. You know, forever and a day, if I can use that phrase, you know, at some point in time, the majority population is going to emulate our culture. Now, they don't want us to be a part of, quote, the culture, but they don't mind. Co-opting.
Right.
That's what I don't understand. They don't like black people, but yet you run to the tanning salon.
But they want to look like black people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Part-time.
There's something psychologically wrong with that picture that you despise black people, but you like the culture, and then you go. For a long time they going to the beaches and trying to get a tan and all of that, but you don't like color. There's something wrong with that.
But you don't like color.
Yeah.
You know, something wrong with the mentality.
You don't like
dark people.
But you like how
the
Dr.
first time,
J dunks the ball. You don't like
exactly.
But you like Jim
and
running over everybody.
Well, and think about this. I know you remember this, Hanson. When Jabbar became what he became, they outlawed dunking because you know it's like, well, until everybody else can dunk, we're not going to allow people to dunk in a basketball game.
we're gonna rule that child ineligible.
Yeah.
So Lou Alcindor, changed the sport of college basketball. Can't nobody else done it now.
No one's done that.
Since
No
you
one's
done
done
made
that.
it so simple.
Well,
You
then
know
you,
what I
and
like
then you,
about this whole conversation here is that you own your black network, and Mike really, boy, he just like gave me a shot of cocaine or something when he said, I can hold it. He said, I can do it. I'm on your network.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do
exactly.
what we want to do on our network.
right. And even a lot of them cats.
And that's it. And that's it. Always been the goal is that, we need to have our own so we can express how we feel without any trepidation, and let they may.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, see, let's talk about.
I just forwarded an email that I think Jared Bell just sent me that had to do with Jamil Hill. Basically, her and some other folks at ESPN did it their way. And until, that's the mindset that, okay, we work for these individuals, but at some point in time, when enough is enough, one has to stand up.
Yeah.
Do you think we have to, Mike, I'm asking you this question, and I'm asking you, John, this question.
Mm-hmm.
You put it out there. Enough is enough. Do you think our, across the board, whether it's entertainment, sports, the people that are in these high profile positions,
mm-hmm.
do you think enough is really enough, and that they are really ready to change the systemic problems in their industries and speak out so that some of these things can be changed?
Well, I don't know. It might depend on how that person got their job.
Are you saying people of color in these industries?
Yeah, hold it. Yeah, all I'm talking about people of color, because I think before we got on the show, doing the show, my mind 69 is on that we're in the driver's seat, but it's like everybody else is the cab. We just won't tell them where to go. And because we have the talent. All the talent in sports are blacks for the most part.
Right.
And
we don't have ownership.
NFL if no black players play. But if all the black players are not on the same page as it relates to things like that, then that divide comes. The same thing with all of the sports. And they're in these positions. What I'm asking you and Mike, do you think that most of them are in the mindset to understand that they're in the driver's seat and are willing to speak on social issues, even though they're athletes, because athletics is part of our social fabric? Mike?
Well, we saw Kaepernick do it 4 years ago.
No, I'm saying the majority.
Some of them. You say majority? You know what? I think it depends on which way the wind's blowing. Because 4 years ago, all you had was Kaepernick. And now it's the vogue thing to do is to stand up and be woke. And, can't be woke on everything, and that's where things kind of like get blurred because, you still got bad quarterbacks in the NFL. And you still got people not calling Kaepernick. You want to come down? And I hope he never will, which is fine.
I don't.
But there was that window.
Right. I mean, why come back now?
Why come back? Right.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's been going so long.
The point is already the point has been made.
Right.
And to come back now from my vantage point is self-defeating, because now the spotlight is on you. We allowed you, quote unquote, to come.
Yeah.
And if you aren't performing, and it's all about performance, and if you aren't performing at the level in which we saw you 4 or 5 years ago,
right,
then you give them an opportunity to say, well, you know, we knew we didn't have it, blah, 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 blah.
Because it quits being about the social aspect, it becomes what you didn't do. That's how they turn that around. That's how they turn that around.
They turn it out. But to answer the other part of your question, that us in the industry, some are and some aren't. Some don't feel, well, one thing, some don't feel comfortable speaking up. And I think that those that aren't feeling comfortable haven't yet gotten to the level in which they are comfortable with themselves and what they do in the industry.
Right.
So if you're not comfortable, I know I'm good at what I do. I can speak what I want to speak. And if I lose my job here, I can find me another job someplace else.
Right. Right.
But by and large, I mean, you know, we still got timid people running around, you know, in these media companies. Sorry to say.
Well, and you know, you make a good point, because one thing about the media industry, media is quick to point to those who aren't hiring their fair share of people of color or not having the diversity. But sometimes that finger needs to be turned around on them. And as a whole, it's like, okay, well, like for instance, why is there an NABJ? I mean, why is there a NAJ or National Association of Broadcasters? Why does there have to be a black
minority media organization?
Yeah. So we got two entities right there. Not that you can't go to the one that's the mainstream, but how many of those are the mainstream and go to the NABJ? Probably not many, because I don't need it.
Case in point, Michael, as you state that, I had an interview some weeks ago, and I don't know if it was Radio Link or something, anyway, because they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of In Black America. And somebody wrote in the comments section is that, well, this program is racist, and if it was an In White America program, then everybody was going to be up in the uproar. And I think I had stated this some time ago, but I'll restate it again. You don't have to have an In White America program. There's already In White America programs 24/7, every major network, every major newspaper in this country. So you don't have to differentiate with white. It's automatic.
Right. Hey, John, Michael will attest to this. This is the point that I'm making across the board. Europeans, ever since the 13th or 12th century, have whitewashed history. And they own basically 100% of all forms of communications on this planet.
Right.
And so basically most human beings at this point have been programmed, even though they don't want to realize that we all have programs. But blacks have been programmed in particular to not work together. It's not like we don't want to work together. We don't want to. But when you look at the real situation, if you know anything about Pavlov's dogs and you had anything in science, you have been trained to react to their stimulus. And that's why when they throw out any little bit of economics in our community, no matter whether it's for sports, health and wellness, or whatever, you got 1 million people trying to get 5 beans, and you got 5,000 people. And then they cut each other up. They kill half of the people trying to get
to it. Right.
And they keep us in that mode of operation because we don't have our own media that is telling a different story. And then even when you have your own media, their programming is so strong. Mike likes using that word, strong. That, they ignore your programming that is designed for them. They've been programmed so much to go and do everything but what's for them.
Well, and you and I grew up during the same era, and the older I get, the more I am convinced that integration was the worst thing that could have ever happened to Black people. Because when I grew up, we had our own pockets in the city of Detroit, but we had our own grocery stores, we had our own shoe shops, we had our doctors, we had our lawyers, we had everything we needed in our village.
And most cities had their own little Black newspaper or something.
Own Black newspaper. The Michigan Chronicle was flourishing. We had our own Black banks. And then when integration took hold in the late 60s, after the civil rights movement, and in the 70s, all these Black businesses disappeared. Now we got to go downtown or 3, 4, eventually, particularly in my neighborhood now, all those Black-owned businesses that were thriving in the 60s, they no longer exist.
Yeah.
There was no heritage handing down skills, fixing shoes. We had our own Black nursery, people coming in, buying flowers.
All of that.
Things that was indigenous to life.
Well, so here's where the ball,
not even a glimmer of it. And if you didn't grow up during that period, you would have never known that these businesses existed and they were owned and operated by Black people.
And the same thing with schools and whatnot. Because if you think back to the lawfulness of integration, what to me, instead of saying have the ability to mix on both sides of the street,
right?
They went ahead and made it be, okay, y'all can come and play with us.
You can come play in our backyard. Play at our playground.
Well, I got a backyard. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Y'all can come to mine, I can come to yours.
Mike, so you got a backyard, baby?
Right. They didn't do it that way. They made it one-sided.
It did, exactly.
And that's see how the imbalance is.
Hey, John, you hear Mike? Mike says, I got a backyard.
Exactly.
Over my place.
Come play in my backyard.
We play in each other's backyards. Yeah. But it wasn't written up that way. It was written up where those who thought they were the dominant were seen as even more dominant because we're letting you come and play on our side of the street.
Yeah, you can come play with us now.
Yeah, you're included, but there's some things you still can't do now. You can't do everything. And that's where the ball was dropped. And so, we'll like I said.
That's like how it was in Kansas City, Mike. How they had that fairyland where Blacks only had one day a year. Amusement park.
Okay.
Blacks only had, I came here from New York in 78. When they told me that, I was like, and y'all put up with that? And they poured in that place the one day a year.
One day, and I know they did. I know they did. And seeing all they had to do was 1 year, just don't go, and able to change everything around.
Well, all right,
we don't want this 1 day a year thing. We're not coming.
That's like my first experience with Texas. I was learning about Juneteenth, and then another buddy of mine who's from California but transplanted to Texas. And, we're talking about Juneteenth. He's like, well, shouldn't they be mad? Tell them 2 years later, they should be mad, shouldn't they? But no, they celebrating.
They celebrated.
Again, you fall into that infrastructure.
Well, like I said, that mindset. I mean, it's we ought to be grateful that 2 years later that you all finally allowed us, quote unquote, to be free.
Right.
So, we're going to make you free, but you got no land, you got no home, you got no job, but you're free.
And it's like, where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go? You don't own anything.
No, and they still, we
so,
still waiting on.
You free, but now you still got to go back and work at less working conditions than there were when you were still under bondage.
And and what a lot of people are unaware of
Give me 2 songs that you think represented the 60s, 2 songs that you, because when Mike told me who he was bringing on and what you did and all of that, 2 songs that represented the 70s, and I guess we can consider the 80s old timers like us. 2 songs that you think.
That's what is peace. When nobody fighting in the 80s.
All right.
In the 60s, I would probably say Aretha Franklin, Respect, and probably it didn't have anything to do with the times, but probably the Temptations, My Girl, which I surmise was one of the first million sellers for a African-American Berry Gordy group.
That's the 60s. What's happening
That's
on the
60s.
70s?
70s. It has to be probably an Earth, Wind, and Fire song, or a song by the Brothers Johnson.
Who?
Brothers Johnson.
The Brothers Johnson.
I said Marvin.
Yeah.
He says Brothers Johnson.
Yeah. All right. The 80s. Hey, Mike, you get your thinking cap on because you doing the 90s and 2000s.
I don't. There was no music in the 90s and the 2000s.
Give them something, Mike, please.
Let me just throw that out there.
The 80s. The 80s.
Well, hey, then act like you know what's. Put something out there. Go ahead, John.
Probably the 80s. Commodores.
They were major.
Yeah.
Brick House.
That's it.
Something about a Commodore.
Yeah. Which
All right,
is the same music I listen to today.
Two 80s people.
Well, that's because I listen to what he just talked about today. I don't listen to 80s today.
Well, probably the other one, probably one of them crooners. So it had to be either Luther, Teddy.
I went to high school with Luther.
Did you? Luther
used to be right there with me. I was an athlete down in the basement. They had shop, and gym. And in the basement where the music was. Luther was a fat, chubby little kid, and he stayed downstairs in the basement where the music. You would have never known that he was who he turned out to be.
He became
a shy kid. He, he's one. Who you got, Mike?
Fast forward. He's gone. Tupac. He spoke to what was going on.
All right,
hands down.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
And NWA. They ruffled some feathers, and the Beastie Boys. Your homies. Out of New York.
Well, I'm going.
Who are you going with?
I'm going with the Chuck D and them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going with Chuck D, and I'm going back with you. I'm going with Black Moses. He was changed.
Isaac Hayes.
I remember when Hot Butter Soul came out.
That's right. That's 68.
Yeah, right. I'm saying I done forgot the major Crocker, Frankie Crocker and them.
Oh, Frankie Crocker, DC.
Yeah, WLIB, and I done forgot my stations up there. But they played Hot Butter Soul for 5 hours straight. Every time that a break, they went right back to Hot Butter Soul that whole night. That was
by the time in Detroit when it came out, they played because I was working the day shift prior to going to school at 7:30 a.m. every morning for I don't know about a month. They played by the time I get to Phoenix because I listened from the time I left my house, and when the song concluded, I was pulling up in the parking lot at the Chrysler plant in Detroit.
And you know what other we left out, really?
Who's
And
that?
I would think that all of y'all would agree. Carlos Santana.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Hands down.
And Miles Davis, even though those are different genres, Miles was turning in the Bitches Brew right around there.
Yeah.
Santana came out with that lion cover that had all these faces. All that was brand new. And it really, if you was in sports, man, there was a center at Virginia State. You couldn't go by his room 24/7. Isaac Hayes, by the time I get the Phoenix.
The Phoenix, yeah. Yeah.
Well, John, before we let you go, how do people tune in to you? Where do they find you?
Well, all they have to do is a podcast. Go to In Black America podcast, and 4 different podcasts will come up. Podcasts for Apple Podcasts, NPR Podcasts, and then we have KUT Podcast. But if they type in Black America Podcast, you'll see 4 different sites where you can hear the program.
Well, listen, I'm glad you made it on the show, because this is called Word Is, and Word Is Black America is going to be just fine.
We're gonna be fine.
Aren't you in a Hall of Fame or some archive or something, national something?
The program has been digitized. I'm now at the Library of Congress. We just had a Wikipedia meeting where my program is being mirrored and matched to all the individuals in which I interviewed on their Wikipedia pages.
See, so you're
like 700 and something program with
John,
digitized the American Archives of Public Broadcasting.
People know now we'd like to carry your podcast on our network, on our worldwide network.
Just email me and I'll hook you up.
All right.
And I'll email me and I'll give you the link. And all you have to do is go to that link. If you put that link on there on your page, and then each week, all they have to do is go to that link and it'll update whatever week that program is.
Hey, Mike, I'm so glad, we was off camera, and before you sent me, you said, this is who I'm having on your program. And as I've said to you, it's your program. You have anybody you want on your program. But then I was like, man, he got the big sports thing, and he's bringing this guy on. I don't know what this guy is not. He's not bringing Dr. J on, and he's not bringing Elgin Baylor on. And boy, this is to me, is a shot in the arm. It's a different type of show. You're talking about sports, but you're talking about more than sports, and even more so, it's directed at a Black audience with some things. And you've had the time for us to kid around and
right.
Need to do.
Well, a lot of times sports is just the backdrop. It's back there because there's other stuff going on. It's supposed to be the diversion, other stuff going on, and that's there are so many. As John and I were talking last week, there's so many ways to look at sports now. It's not just the highlights and the scores anymore. There's so much substance regarding sports.
Well, sports is another microcosm of society.
Exactly.
What happened. What happened in sports transcends in society, and vice versa.
Well, I mean, and in order for social issues to work, it's always experimented first with sports.
Exactly.
I mean, Jackie Robinson comes to mind.
And before I let you go, I was doing a little research, and I had forgotten about this. 2 years before Jackie Robinson debuted, the Los Angeles Rams drafted Kenny Washington and Woody Strode. So Jackie Robinson get all the credit because of the baseball, but 2 years before
the Rams, made
a debut.
And there's a movie called
it was the Los Angeles Rams.
There's a movie called The First Four.
Right.
And they talk about those 4 brothers who did it before Jackie.
Tell the audience, Mike, where they can get that information from.
Oh shoot! You just look up Woody Strode. He's a Hollywood actor.
Right, I know. But I'm saying you said the first 4.
Oh, the first 4. It's called the first 4. It talks about the first 4 brothers to play.
So
yeah,
and see, as a matter of fact, I got it here somewhere.
Yeah, they debuted about 5 years ago. 4 years ago, I saw that.
They just honored Woody Strode.
It was Kenny Washington, Woody Strode, then it was Bill Willis and Marilyn Motley. Those were the first 4.
Marion Motley, yeah. Because Marion Motley was a running back who wore number 76.
Hey, Mike, do you think that later on in your series you can do a special on the first 4 and we get footage and all of that?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'll tell you later, but I got a guy in mind who just wrote a book last year on the integration of and the segregation of football in the state of Texas, and why the family like Bubba Smith, who was born and raised in Beaumont,
had to go to Michigan
wound up in California. Detroit, wasn't he a Detroit guy?
No.
Or Detroit, was he alive?
He
wasn't. He was a Baltimore.
But ended up had to go to Michigan State.
Yeah, that's right. I knew there was a connection with Michigan.
Yeah.
But yeah. And there's also a guy at San Angelo State who in 1950, just before the Topeka Board of Brown of Education situation, he was from San Jose, or from that town, and got a scholarship to play in Illinois, but wound up going to the Army after a year or 2, went back home, San Angelo, went back home, and asked to be on the football team. And the coaches were familiar with him. And the coach was like, well, we'd love to have you, but we don't have black players. And he said, well, listen, I want to play. How do I? He said, well, go talk to the chancellor. They told him how to get to the chancellor's office. I read the book. I'm gonna have this guy on. And the chancellor's like, you're so convicted and wanting to play, I can't tell you no. He told him where to go register and get your books. He said, I'll call the coach. And what he said to the coach was, I think I just integrated college football here. It wasn't, that's all it was. I think I just integrated our football program. So you good with that? Yeah, we're good. And they asked good stories about him and that team. The team stood up for him in that era. You're talking about early 1954. If he can't stay here, we're not going to stay here. All that kind of stuff. So a guy like that, who's a historian on Texas football involving, black football players, we'll be talking to him as well. And, Earl Campbell will tell you that he just happened to be born at the right time. Because everybody to a man would tell you the oldest of he and his brothers, who just passed away this past Friday,
was much better than he was.
They said he was the athlete.
What his older brother was?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But because he's like 6 or 7 years older than Earl, and so given the time span, he wasn't given the opportunity.
He missed out because of that.
Yeah.
Jason.
But they weren't about to let Earl Campbell just fall by the wayside, and they did the due diligence, and they said they were recruiting everywhere once that era opened up. Once Bear Bryant said, after Sam Bam Cunningham ran all just through them in the bowl game, he's like, well, how do we get one of those?
Yeah, how do we get one of them Negroes?
We got to have integration.
Like, I need a half dozen of them.
Well, there's no saying that Bear Bryant did more for civil rights than Dr. King. Now, that's tongue in cheek, but you get the point.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, John, thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. We'll have you back as well. Definitely, for sure.
All right.
Hey, Mike.
That's John Hanson,
KUT's
Black
closing?
America. Check him out.
Closing.
Say what?
Statement like mine. What's yours? I always close with when you invest in your community. What's your closing, Mike?
My closing is just come back next time and see what the latest word is.
Get gotten.
Ow! I like that. You clever as Mike. I love
it.
He shook me up so much. He did a cross. Alvin Iverson crossover on me.
That's it.
Hey, people.
All right, fellas, I'll talk to y'all.
Mike trying to go.
I'll send you John's information, Carlos. I'll send you.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, Hans. Thanks, buddy.
As I close all the time, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.